Let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. It's a lovely Friday, but we can't start the show if the tubes aren't connected, and yours truly is sitting here rambling all off into oblivion. It looks like it's working, though. That's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Govea. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about the Trump prosecution. We've got Jack Smith, the special counsel, who is objecting to Donald Trump's request for a postponement of the trial date indefinitely. We've got a lot to attend to, and so we're going to start the day off. Before we get into the Jack Smith, Trump prosecution, Biden whistleblower, Hunter Biden cease and desist stuff, we are going to go through and see what's happening with this mobilization order from the president, Joe Biden, something that kind of snuck under the radar yesterday. And I was poking around through this. I was taking a look at some of the reaction from Senator Mike Lee and Vivek and others. And so I wanted to just quickly cover this story because he's mobilizing the selected reserve and the individual ready reserved of the armed forces over into active duty. And I was looking around and what does that mean exactly? You know, I'm not somebody with a background in that. And so I found this this chart, this organizational chart, to sort of show us what is actually happening. And so wanted to run through that just so we knew what's happening. I mean, the other, time that we had one of these was when George Bush maneuvered people into Iraq, essentially. And so it's not really ideal that we're exacerbating the situation there. But John Kirby explains, he says, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. It's just standard stuff. These guys are going to be, packing lunches and stuff like that. So don't worry about it. So we'll hit that. We'll see what Mike Lee and Vivek had to say about it before we turn our attention to some of the other stories we have been covering here. Of course, Jack Smith. Now, we have been playing the back and forth on this little skirmish. Criminal trials are a bunch of little, skirmishes and battles that you wage up until you decide whether we're going to take a plea deal or go to trial. And so this one is a little bit of a battle, and we've already read through the government's motion for a continuance. They're asking to postpone the August trial date, which is set like less than a month away, into December. The government wanted a postponement into December. Then Trump said in his response, well, not real sure about that. How about we just don't have a trial date? We read through both of those motions. And so because it's Jack Smith's motion, he gets the final word. And so he is replying to Trump's response like a sandwich. He's the final layer. And then we're going to go through that. And he says it's just ridiculous. There's no reason why we should not have a trial date. We also got a notice of compliance from one of Trump's lawyers, Christopher Kise, Kise, I think we're going to say Kise. And he is saying, I've gone through everything to get my security compliance completed pursuant to the court order and all of those things. And MSNBC is reacting to this, asking themselves whether this is Judge Cannon's first test. And it actually might be. We're going to see what she does here. I think I know what she's going to do, but we'll talk about that. Then there was a new leak. Jared Kushner, family member of Trump, married to Ivanka, apparently appeared before the special counsel at a grand jury. They're still investigating the January 6th component of this and the seizure of America. And they're trying to get at Trump's mindset, whether he's got a guilty mind, whether he crossed the red line of, from just investigating to actually insurrecting. And they're talking to his lawyers. They're talking to his executive, staff, his team, his vice president. They're talking to now family members in Kushner. And so we'll see what that story has for us. We also know other people like Newt Gingrich appeared. And so, this thing is extensive. And now that we're getting to these people like Kushner and others, we're asking ourselves, we got to get really close to an indictment any minute now. And so as per usual, we'll see what MSNBC and CNN had to say about that story. They get all the leaks, it's just like they wake up and they're like, oh, hey, more emails from Jack Smith's office. It's amazing. So we'll go through that. Then a little bit of follow up on what's happening with Garland, the Biden whistleblower, the individual who blew the whistle on the Bidens and then got charged by the Biden DOJ. Shocking. I know. What a surprise. But James Comer sent a letter over to Director Wray, and this letter came out after Wray's testimony. I believe it was after Wray's testimony or the day of Wray's testimony, I think. So regardless, it is from Comer to Director Wray. He's got questions about Garland. He's wondering why is whistleblower here being charged for doing the same exact conduct that we have a lot of suspicions that Hunter Biden was involved in. And the Oversight Committee also drafted this chart for us, and you can see how the sequence of events worked. So it would start with Joe Biden goes to the country, then the president of that country comes to the White House, so there's an exchange, and then there's a business deal, and then, of course, you know, a couple months later, that person gets charged with crimes, but the Bidens don't. Biden gets $1 million. So we'll go through that, as well as Comer's reaction, talking about canceling this plea deal, which I think is a good idea. Then we also have Ted Cruz. And this was a spicy clip. We were listening to this on our Locals after party yesterday. But I went and got the full excerpt. And Ted Cruz is fired up about what is happening at the DOJ. And Ted Cruz is a sharp guy. You know, he's, I think, a Supreme Court clerk or something like that. You know, he knows his law pretty well. And he was out there fired up, saying that it's time now to appoint a special counsel, not to investigate Trump, as we have now, but to investigate Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General of the United States. And so we'll go through that. And this has actually happened before. We were doing some research on ChatGPT, our friend over there, and this has happened before. And so we were asking ourselves, has it happened in this context, like where the U.S. Attorney just came to Congress and just lied through his teeth to us? We'll see. So we've got Ted Cruz, and then another statement from Byron Donalds. You know, maybe if we don't have a special prosecutor appointed, we just impeach this dude, which is not a bad idea either. And then lastly, in an amazing story, Hunter Biden sends Donald Trump a cease and desist letter. He's like, please stop talking badly about me, man. You're going to cause harm to me. And it's just hysterical. So I know this guy has so much bravado. And why wouldn't he? He's got the whole Department of Justice at his back. So literally sent Trump's lawyers a cease and desist. We'll read through the letter and we'll see what Congress, they're not reacting to this, but they are highlighting the double standards. And I'm not so sure that Trump is going to cease and desist anything, as he is still dropping comments like this one that we'll listen to. And so, my friends, it's a beautiful, beautiful Friday. We are here a little bit early. Thank you for joining us on this lovely day. And we are going to be attending to a lot of business. And then this weekend, we'll have some extra members-only stuff. We got some fun stuff planned for the weekend. We'll do some walk and talks out in nature coming up. And so if you would like to join us, head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. and join us over there. We also do member-only morning streams. We go through the Trump docket updates. We go through the Biden schedule, congressional committee schedule, see what's going on in the various court proceedings around the country. We'd love it if you joined us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or you can become a member also on YouTube, and you get a lot of the same stuff. The only thing is, if you're on YouTube, join us on our private Telegram group so you get the after party. That's the only difference between the two. And we'd love to see you, no matter where you join us, on our private chat that never ends. We also have a weekend coming up, and, you know, sometimes we can let loose a little bit on our nutrition. I know I can, but it's important that we eat our greens and lose those leftover pandemic pounds. And because, you know, we are all sick of those ads for weight loss pills and fad diets. They're all over your pharmaceutical commercial screen. But we've all been there. We've all done that. And we don't want to do it. We want to instead be healthy by eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every single day? Gosh, I don't. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast. But the best proof is going to happen when you walk into your doctor's office just for your checkup. You're going to be healthy as can be, probably doing cartwheels in there. You're going to be feeling so good. And he's going to walk in there, and he might need a doctor. That's how shocked he's going to be when he sees how much weight you've lost. He's going to say, oh my gosh, whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so why don't we get you started? Go on over to fieldofgreens.com, very simple website. Load up your cart, tons of goodies. Be extra healthy, and don't forget to use code Robert when you check out so you can save that 15%, baby. Woo! 15% at checkout at fieldofgreens.com. All right. And so now we've got some business to attend to. And let's start with what's going on with the president. We have our president. As World War III continues to evolve around us, our president is now mobilizing reserve troops. And I had some questions about this. A lot of people did, in fact. We have Senator Mike Lee, who was trying to cobble together what this means exactly. Vivek, running for president, is sounding the alarm bells on this. And the reason for that is because in some other executive orders, we've seen what has happened when the reserves have been activated. In fact, in George Bush's, the W in 13223, he issued this one, which was something that we saw as a precursor to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, that endless war that lasted most of my life. So Executive Order 13223, ordering the ready reserve of the armed forces. This one's a pretty long one. You see, this one came out after September 14, 2001, and this one is activating the ready reserve. We're going to come back to that, right? There are specific names for these different components. So activating the ready reserve. And so people are getting a little bit nervous about this, right? This is George Bush saying all these troops are going over there. And we know we lost a lot of blood and, loved Americans in this conflict. And we don't want to see it happen again. So this is what George Bush submitted. And others are a little bit concerned about this. In fact, Vivek said the following when he got wind of this. He posted this on Twitter, and this is something it feels like a lot of the media is ignoring. He says, "It's downright disturbing that the U.S. media is ignoring the fact that Biden is ordering 3,000 members of the selected reserve or individual ready reserve," we'll break down what those mean, "to Europe, quote, for the effective conduct of Operation Atlantic Resolve." What? The last time there was an IRR call-up was during the Iraq War, when the justification was, quote, non-existent weapons of mass destruction held by Saddam. What's the justification now? What are the operations? Where will they go? What will they do? John Kirby's going to tell us they're going to be making lunches or something. We need answers, not just sweeping this under the rug as Biden would prefer. This comes just 3 days after the Biden White House told Congress it wants to remove a provision of the annual defense policy bill that would create a special inspector general for Ukraine aid. In other words, they don't want oversight of the money. Why? What are we not supposed to know? I'm equally sad and shocked that I have to ask questions that the mainstream press and much of the GOP won't, because they're all on Team Ukraine. Zelensky consolidated the Ukrainian media into a single state media network to avoid questions during the war. Even worse, the same thing appears to be happening here at home. Pray that asking such questions won't soon be alleged as a violation of the Espionage Act, which is what Donald Trump is being prosecuted under. And everybody out there who says that if you're not aligned hard enough with Ukraine, you're a Putin stooge. These people are nuts. Meanwhile, there's a contingent of which Donald Trump belongs that just want the war to end or tired of seeing the killings. And maybe there's a way to facilitate that without, as Jake Sullivan and the Biden administration has already dictated, charging Putin with war crimes in the International Criminal Court. Don't think that's a reasonable way to start the resolution, even if that's something that you think is appropriate. So Vivek is pounding the alarm on this. We also have reaction from Mike Lee. But this was something that I thought was interesting. Now, if you go to the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs, they'll provide data that was consolidated into a chart that looks like this. I'm asking myself, all right, well, what does that mean exactly? When they're saying that they're going to mobilize the selected reserve and different components of the individual ready reserve, these are the different categories of manpower. So you see at the top, total reserve manpower listed here. You've got the ready reserve, then you've got the standby reserve, then you've got the retired reserve, right? So it looks like you're going from left to right on who gets activated, what priorities. So the retired, they're last. Standby, all right, if you're on an active list or inactive list, we go to you last, but otherwise you're part of the ready reserve. And they're going to start with certain members of the individual ready reserve and sounds like the entire selected reserve, which if you look at that component, there is units, the individual mobilization augmentees, IMAs, active guard and reserve, and then drilling reservists and a training pipeline, non-deployable accounts. So that's a pretty substantial selection of the ready reserve is my point. It's essentially two branches, one and a half, depending on how many are being activated, what certain members are being activated. And this could be a fluid dynamic number that just changes over time. So you've got what looks to be, pretty significant shift that's happening. And certain people are concerned about that. Now, here's what the executive order actually looks like. It's not all that interesting, but it was published by the president. It says ordering, you see here, the selected reserve and the individual ready reserve, certain members of that, those two buckets, certain members of those are going to be activated. He says, I'm the president. The law says I can do this. We're going to be mobilizing for Operation Atlantic Resolve. And we're going to see what that means. John Kirby's going to explain it in a minute. I authorize the Secretary of Defense to do the following things: a total not to exceed 3,000 total members at any one time, of whom not more than 450 may be members of the IRR as they deem necessary. So short order, but some people are a little bit nervous about this because it feels like we have American troops now going into a theater of war to a higher degree, and we're concerned about that. John Kirby says nothing to be worried about. This is just standard business. We've just got some beds to make over there. Here's what he says.
Now, back to the European continent and this announcement by the Pentagon. I think it's important to keep this in context. We've already increased by 20,000 the number of troops that we have on the European continent, and by and large, we've been able to keep that rotational presence there. So you got more than 80,000 troops there in Europe, and that's a lot. And what we're going to do with these small number of 3,000 reservists or National Guardsmen, these are people that are specialists in things like administrative functions, logistics, supply, maybe medical, dental, those kinds of the kind of enabling functions that you need to be able to support and sustain a large troop presence for a long time. And what this is basically is a realization of the fact that we know, the president knows, that the security environment in Europe is changed, not has changed, not will change. It's changed now. And we've got to make sure that we've got the proper force posture to be able to support an additional eastern flank presence for the long haul.
And we'll see if that executive order gets amended and that number slowly starts to creep up as more resources are dumped into this theater. But Senator Mike Lee, a little bit nervous about this as well. Here's what he had to say about this over from Utah. He says, look, I'm trying to figure out what this means, all right? Bottom line up front, President Biden is arguably walking the U.S. up to the line of war and daring Russia to shoot first. Well, that doesn't sound good. He says, under U.S. law, it gives the president the authority to augment the forces of any named operational mission to active duty for not more than 365 consecutive days. Operation Atlantic Resolve has existed since 2014 and is an official named U.S. military mission that deploys forces on a rotational basis, mainly to the Baltic states and Poland. So it's been going on for a while. They're just rotating people through it. Open source information on Operation Atlantic Resolve from the DoD does not suggest any forces are present in Ukraine under this mission. Since conflict with Russia and Ukraine came to blows in 2014, rotational deployments under Atlantic Resolve have been considered a backbone of deterring Russia from crossing NATO's eastern flank. The active duty activation and the deployment of these additional forces, Senator Mike Lee says, is a dangerous provocation, knowing full well NATO's eastern flank is adjacent to active hostilities. They say President Biden did the same thing at the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, massively increasing our active duty force presence when we knew hostilities were imminent. But now it's even more risky because hostilities are active. Not only does this run the risk of further locking us into supporting Ukraine, which is exactly what they want. I mean, it's interesting timing on this. They were just going around, skipping around the gardens together. Biden wasn't skipping, more like tripping. But they were, broing it up over there. And Biden was sitting there across him in the chairs. We're not leaving whether you like it or not, like, a psycho ex-girlfriend. So this is a situation where he's saying, yeah, this is just locking them in indefinitely. Now the military-industrial complex will say the U.S. military presence is the one thing preventing Russia from crossing NATO's eastern border, and that we have to maintain such a presence indefinitely. Which means, this probably means a long-term security guarantee, another endless war, but this time by proxy, which is exactly what they want. Lee says, one could argue that unilateral troop activations, deployments like this into areas of active war hostilities should be treated as a breach of the War Powers Act. Regardless, this makes me really uneasy. And, you know, as we know, these things do take time. And World War II lasted years. And the consequences were pretty severe. And so we're asking ourselves, what inning are we in this game? And slowly but surely, it seems like boiling frogs every day. Things continue to escalate. All right, my friends. So now that we know we're on the brink of World War III, let's talk about what's happening here at home. Special Prosecutor Jack Smith objects to Donald Trump's request for an indefinite trial date. Today, we're going to look at the reply to Donald Trump's response. This is the document that came out from Jack Smith's team responding to Donald Trump's response to Jack Smith's requests. I know that's a lot there, but the way it works, one party makes a motion. In this case, the government started. We have a trial scheduled for August. They want to postpone it to December. So Jack Smith and his prosecutors, they submitted a motion to the judge. Can we bump this back a couple months? We've got a lot of work to do. Trump's team says, we'd love to bump it back, but we don't want an end date. We don't actually want to schedule it at all because there's so much to do, and we just don't really know what a reasonable end date would be. And we covered both of those motions, and when we were listening to Trump's side's motion, we were saying this is a very smart motion. It's a very nice attempt to get an indefinite date, or essentially to get no trial date. We thought it was a long shot, but now Donald Trump's team is going to be waiting for a ruling from Judge Eileen Cannon. But this is the final response on the request. This is the objection to Trump's request for an indefinite trial date from Jack Smith. And so let's take a look at the reply. You see, this is the case brought before Judge Cannon out of West Palm Beach in Florida. U.S. versus Trump. This is the government's reply. They're saying, all right, Your Honor, look, we already asked you for a continuance. Trump made some reasonable alternative requests, but now we're asking for it again, supporting our motion for a continuance. They say, all right, Judge, you know, in their response to our request, Trump claims unequivocally that they cannot receive a fair trial prior to the conclusion of the next presidential election. Trump says, we got to go after the election because, I mean, even if we postpone it to December, we've got the Iowa caucuses coming up in January. So let's say we don't get the trial done in December. We're going to be in, let's say we bump this out to March, April, May, or whatever. We know there's always continuances. We're going to be in trial season. So we might as well just postpone the whole thing until after the election. We can't have a trial going on while people are going into the ballot box. So Jack Smith says, no, this is ridiculous. They urge the court to withdraw the current scheduling order, and they request that the court not even consider a new trial date. There is no basis in law or fact for providing such an indeterminate and open-ended fashion for a trial date. And I think this is actually accurate, right? In criminal law, there is always a trial date. And the reason for that is because it's a constitutional mandate that the defendant has a right to a speedy trial. And you've got to keep those end dates in mind so you never lose sight of the calculation of the case. How many days have elapsed between the arrest, the indictment, the arraignment? All of these are very important. We've got calculations that we do throughout the case. And if a government violates your speedy trial rights, one of the remedies is a dismissal of the case. So by practice, it's almost never without an end date, especially in a serious case like a felony. If you have like a misdemeanor shoplifting charge or something like that, they're not as serious about that in practice. But in a serious felony case, to have no trial date is very rare, if not unheard of. But what Trump's team was doing is they were strategically not offering an end date. They didn't want to come out and say, okay, Judge, how about July 4th or August 8th or whatever it is. They want to postpone it indefinitely because if they anchored a date in, the judge would hold them to that, and they want that fluid ability. So special counsel says, for the reasons before you, Judge, the court should reset the trial. Don't listen to them. Reschedule it for December 11th. Now, they talk about the Speedy Trial Act and other law, which we'll fast forward through. They say that Trump's team and their basis for urging the court to defer us setting a trial date, it boils down to the following. They say there's serious, significant legal issues of first impression. The volume of the discovery, all the evidence is massive. The pending classification process, the possibility that their motions might succeed. They were thinking that they're going to file, for example, Trump's team might submit a motion to preclude anything that came from the search warrant, or a motion to dismiss based on some illegality, and that would result in a dismissal of the case, and we don't even need a trial. That's how confident we are. And that's what they were saying is justification for not having a trial date. The alleged inability to select an impartial jury trial during the election season, their own schedules, and their lawyers. And none of these warrants a wide open schedule that the court is going to adopt. This is from Jack Smith's tape. They say, first of all, these case issues, these charges are not novel. They're not new. There's nothing new happening here. So what if he's a former president? So what if he's running for office right now? This doesn't make this case complex at all. This is hardly an issue of first impression. We already gave, in United States versus Nixon in '74, the power to appoint special counsels. And we've had many special counsels before. And we can prosecute many federal crimes under any other special counsel status, right? So he's saying Trump is just another executive person who has been prosecuted. Many of them have been prosecuted before. And they say, well, the fact that he's president doesn't matter anyways, because the impact of the Presidential Records Act, which applies to him, which didn't to those other people, any argument is nearly frivolous, they say. The PRA is not a criminal statute, which many people have argued, why are you prosecuting him? In no way purports to address the retention of national security info. They say Trump are free to make whatever arguments they want and the government will respond, but they shouldn't be able to gesture at a baseless legal argument and call it novel, which I think is totally nuts. I mean, there's a constitutional argument that the Presidential Records Act doesn't apply. I'm sorry, that any of the Espionage Act doesn't apply to Donald Trump, in my opinion, at least if it's his documents. If the documents came from his administration, then they're his, as far as I'm concerned. And I think as far as the Constitution is concerned, and if you don't like how that's read, amend the Constitution. But the criminal statute, in my read, doesn't supersede the root power of the executive branch to be the owner of those documents. Anything else is just nuts because it says that the National Archives is now more powerful than the president. So even if the court were to conclude that these legal issues were novel, which they are, this is a first, a former president has never been prosecuted like this before over a documents problem. The act requires more. They say the issues must be novel such that it's unreasonable to expect pretrial proceedings within the time limits. He's saying we got to follow the speedy trial provisions. They want to go fast. He's saying there's no justification to go slow. They don't make any showing whatsoever on this. No extensive review of discovery or classified information is going to be required to prepare briefs on these. And so with any pretrial motion that might resolve this case, all that's necessary is the indictment, which they've had for over a month. And they've already briefed arguments on this issue. And so they don't justify a deviation from a speedy trial date. This case is not complex. We should have it done quickly in December. They say that the Trump team needing discovery does not warrant a continuance. And if you remember when we read through the Trump response, they talked about mounds of, terabytes of data, just throngs of data that were coming their direction. And the numbers were massive. We're like, oh my gosh, like security camera footage, thousands of hours. It was just nuts. So they say defendants claim, Trump's team, that the volume of discovery justifies the extension. They say no. They say our discovery is thorough and organized. It's been provided. It's consistent with the trial date. They have plenty of time to review it. The government has taken steps to make this review as efficient as possible. Here's what we've done. We've set key documents that were referenced in the indictment, and we put them in nice folders for them. The defendant's convenience, the government also included a log, wow, which is like an index. The government has produced over 800,000 pages, and the key documents was only 4,500. All right, so 800,000 pages, like a wheelbarrow full of documents. And then the 4,500 is really the important stuff, they say. Take our word for it. They only really need the 4,500. I mean, they can just trust us that they gleaned out and synthesized the most important things for us. The government similarly identified that the defendants, a small set of key CCTV footage, also referenced in the indictment as well. You don't need to watch it all. Here's the good stuff. And although the footage the government obtained comes from various months, their characterization of this as 9 months of footage is misleading. The government obtained footage from select cameras, many that don't continuously record, and so they got plenty of time, in other words. Defendants' alleged inability to use contract personnel, because remember, one of the problems is that this case involves classified documents. So the people who see the documents have to go through the procedures in order to get the clarification, the security clearance to see them. So you can't go, say, hey, law firm, everybody get involved on this big case. We've got trial in 2 weeks. Start running through this. You can't do that because everybody who's in that team would have to go through the clearance process. They're saying, yeah, but not the unclassified stuff. The discovery materials in any criminal case routinely go to document reviewers. And so there's no explanation of why they couldn't use them for the unclassified stuff. So that's a bad excuse, Judge. They say Trump also relies on the government statement in its discovery letter that there will be additional discovery. Trump's team said, Judge, they're going to be like delivering even more to us, so we need even more time. The government has informed the defense it intends to disclose promptly all witnesses, all memos, even if they're not already discoverable. And the government has already produced all the unclassified witness statements and the memorialization of all the statements. And next week, the government's going to produce more unclassified witnesses. And the government has already made these productions promptly following the arraignment. And so the government turned over tons of stuff, and we intend to do so. All right, so they're moving fast. So they're just delivering. Boom, boom, boom. Dropping batches. They say with respect to the devices and the other search warrants, the government has produced all the applications. The government has produced all relevant content from the devices, but not 3. There are 3 devices that were handed over voluntarily. They're going to give those documents next week, and also 2 of Nato's devices. For his devices, the government has already produced a bunch of stuff as well. They say, Your Honor, they also argue, Trump's team, that they need a continuance so that they can get their security clearances. But the government has obtained a bunch of documents. Okay, so yeah, they have to comply with security clearances, and they have. Christopher Kise has. Prosecutors say in the course of its investigation, the government obtained approximately 340 documents bearing classification markings that had been moved from the White House to Mar-a-Lago at the end of the term. The first tranche of classified discovery will include all documents with classification markings recovered from Mar-a-Lago to which Counsels' interim clearances will permit them access. Right. They want to see every one of them. Trump hasn't been charged with 340 of these, but they want to see all of them. This represents a large majority of the classified records from Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so they will not see them all. Only that they will permit them to access. This represents a large majority. So when we get the initial batch, they're not going to have all 340, but they're not telling us what the differential is. This represents a large majority of the records. How many of the 340? We don't know what the top number is. The government also plans to produce a small number of witnesses and memorialization of those statements that contain the classified info. The government intends to transport these materials early next week to a SCIF maintained for cleared defense attorneys in Miami. Once defense counsel have their final clearances, the government will bring the remaining documents to the SCIF, as well as Jenks material and other classified records pertaining to declassification. In sum, neither the amount of classified discovery in this case nor the timetable is a reason for indefinite continuance. Our schedule complies with the CIPA schedule laws, and they give us some other cases. They say in other cases, Less than a year elapsed between an arrest and a verdict. Okay, so they went and found this case. This guy, let's take a look. What kind of other cases were brought under this law? Okay, this case had, we don't know the nature of this case, but it had COVID delays. This case was the prosecution of a former CIA agent who spied for China. Yeah. So he actually got charged, and they got him convicted in under a year. So they're saying we should do the same thing for Trump. And the remaining arguments from Trump's team are just meritless. They say, look, there's no reason to defer this. They claim that they're going to file some motions that are going to dispose of this case. But that's not a factor under the law. They cite no cases to make that a factor. And here's the argument about the election. Defendants claim that this court could not select an impartial jury until after the election. They say, but that doesn't justify a delay. Why? Well, there is no reason to credit the claim. Our jury system relies on the court's authority to craft a thorough and effective jury selection process. Look at this. Based on the prospective jurors' abilities and willingness to decide cases based on evidence presented to them, guided by legal instructions from the court. So in other words, they're implying that if Trump is on trial, they're going to get a bunch of jurors to come in and they're going to say, can you be fair and impartial in this case? And they're going to go, well, it's the election's like in a week, so, but can you set that aside and be fair and impartial? You want me to say yes? Okay, yes, sure, yes. And they'll get a whole bunch of jurors on there. So to be sure, the government readily acknowledges that jury selection here may merit additional protocols like a form question, like a questionnaire. That's going to resolve it. And maybe more time consuming than in other cases, but that's the reason to start the process now. We got to start now, Judge, not later. They want him convicted before the election so they can use that as justification to get him off the ballots. He's been convicted of felonies, get him off the ballot. The only two cases defendants cite on the subject don't help him. They give them, examples and they attack their cases. Moreover, they say the Trump team argues that it will be a challenge to select a jury, but that's not going to change after the election. People are still going to be biased after the fact. Yeah, but they're not going to have an opportunity to convict their political opponents in a trial. Okay. The government's position is that the best way to move this case forward, consistent with the defendant's rights and public interest, is to set a trial date now and follow the other procedures and the schedules that are needed. They say Trump and his teams, their professional schedules also don't provide a delay. We all have busy jobs. And so we all have to travel, and that's no basis for a continuance. For all these reasons, Jack Smith's team says this court should reject defendant's invitation to defer the trial date consideration and set jury trial selection to start on December 11th, 2023. Submitted by David Harbach over at the Special Counsel's office. Here's the certificate of service. And it's going to be curious to see what this judge does on it. I do not think that we will get an indefinite trial date. I do not think that that will happen. I do think that what is more likely is the judge will set a trial date and then be willing to move it if there are needs for a continuance. And so we might actually see a trial date before the end of the year, but the likelihood that it happens is still up in the air. So this was another filing. Christopher Kise, Trump's lawyers, did submit a notice of compliance. He says, yeah, we've gotten some of this stuff done. Christopher Kise, law firm of so-and-so, along with Todd Blanche, filed this notice of compliance. The judge ordered us to complete all outstanding applicant tasks required to get the security clearances in this matter. This document is to notify the court that these lawyers for Trump, we have completed all outstanding applicant tasks required to obtain the security clearances, with one exception. Mr. Kise is coordinating with the litigation security group and has arranged for his fingerprints to be submitted on Monday, July 17th. Respectfully signed and submitted by Christopher Kise, Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyers. And so it is moving forward. I mean, they're going to be getting access to this stuff, and we're going to see what Judge Eileen Cannon says when she rules upon this, which should be soon because we've got a trial coming up in August as it currently is scheduled. But MSNBC is reacting to this, speculating about what Cannon might do and what this might mean.
It's been very busy here. He was also filing a reply memo to Donald Trump and Walt Nauta's request to delay this criminal trial, the Mar-a-Lago document trial, until after the 2024 election. Is this going to be the first real test that we have of Eileen Cannon's chops as a judge over a major criminal case?
So it's a really strong reply from Jack Smith saying that there is no basis here in the law to delay this trial and have no trial date. Criminal defendants all the time, most of them have jobs and most of them have other professional schedules and lives. And that is not a basis to delay a trial and not have a trial date. You know, similarly, one of the arguments that he really eviscerated in his reply was the argument that, well, under the Presidential Records Act, Donald Trump was entitled to these documents, and this is a novel legal theory. It's not novel, it's baseless. And when it's baseless, that actually means it's going to be that much easier for the judge to dispose of it.
Really, has it been disposed of before? Is there a ruling? Is there another case out there where a judge has ruled upon an argument from a former president about their executive authority to be entitled to the documents that they created in their own administrations? Is there a ruling on that in a criminal case that has been prosecuted by the DOJ? Wow. Amazing. I had no idea. Yeah, that's pretty curious. There are some other examples, though. There is the one example where Judicial Watch tried to sue for Bill Clinton's records, and the D.C. court said that the presidential records immunized him for that. So that's curious. I wonder why Jack Smith didn't reference that one. So,
again, the discovery, that was another issue that he took apart in his reply. He said, we've given you everything. We gave you the unclassified discovery. We're making available the classified discovery as soon as you actually fill out the forms giving you clearance, which you haven't done. So,
and he also acknowledged that there's 800,000 pages of material and that they've already gleaned out the most important stuff for the defense, which is very nice of them, but not appreciated because we don't trust what they have disclosed.
It's a strong reply, and I would expect, if Judge Cannon is following the law as we would expect her to, that she will set a trial date, and hopefully the trial date that Jack Smith is asking for in December, and if not that, something not too far after that. What do you think?
All right, so I think she's right that the judge will set a trial date, and it probably will, I would suspect that it's not in December. But if it's not in December, then it literally goes into election season, at which point the judge might consider new motions for continuances. So Trump has to just get it over the hump, just get it over this hill a little bit. And if he can do that, then it's going to be difficult to have the trial before the election. So, but they're going to move fast. And in D.C., I don't think this is even going to be a question. Judge Cannon might postpone this. In D.C., I'm not sure they're going to do that.
Joyce, is this something where we're going to see Judge Eileen Cannon set a date in December, or are we going to see more time frittered away on this case as we speed toward the 2024 election?
Well, I think Christie is dead on the money with her assessment here. The Speedy Trial Act requires Judge Cannon to set a trial date. Trump has asked for no trial date. That's just not an option under the law. And if she complies with that request, Jack Smith and the Special Counsel's office will be off to the 11th Circuit with a motion, probably a mandamus petition, ordering her to set a date and a request that she be recused from further participation in the case.
Yeah, so there will be a date, but we just don't know when it will be. I don't think it will be on December 11th. That is very soon, and there is a lot to get to. But if it is not on the 11th, then it's into next year, and then Trump's team might renew another motion right as the election season heats up, which might justify a further continuance, and we might see a different track in D.C. So we have criminal prosecutions percolating. We have political elections right around the corner. And we're going to see what Judge Cannon does. This will be the first of many skirmishes that we'll continue to cover. All right, my friends. Now, we also know more about what's happening on the January 6th investigation. Special Counsel Jack Smith inching closer to another indictment, this one out of D.C. Many people speculating it could be coming any minute now. And one of the reasons why is because we get new leaks that Jared Kushner is somebody who also appeared before the special counsel's grand jury. And there's a lot of reaction to this because he is a family member of Donald Trump. He's married to Ivanka Trump, and they were very close in Donald Trump's White House. And so as the special counsel is getting ready to indict Trump, one of the things we have been asking about is Donald Trump's mental state. Is there enough there to charge him with crimes with a guilty mind, some sort of involvement in a seditious conspiracy? How is that going to work? But now we know they've already talked to Trump's lawyers. They've talked to Trump's team like Mike Pence and people within his executive circle. Now they've got family members as well. The New York Times reports that prosecutors are asking witnesses whether Trump acknowledged he lost the 2020 race. Did he admit to you that he knew he lost and he did this anyways? Jared Kushner was questioned before a federal grand jury. Appeared to be trying to establish if the former president knew his efforts to stay in power were a lie. Now, it's amazing how many leaks come out, but the New York Times got this one. Federal prosecutors have questioned multiple witnesses in recent weeks, including Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, about whether Trump had privately acknowledged in the days after 2020 that he had lost, according to 4 people briefed on the matter. Is it like a group text? The line of questioning suggests prosecutors are trying to establish whether Trump was acting with a corrupt intent as he sought to remain in power. Essentially, that his efforts were knowingly based on a lie. And that's going to be the most difficult thing to prove here. Because as we've talked a lot about, you're allowed to investigate your legal options. And in an adversarial system in this country, push those to the limit. That's what a trial is. Everybody says, you're wrong, I'm right. You're wrong, I'm right. Let's duke it out in the system. But they're going to say Trump knew that he lost and tried to exploit it nonetheless. Essentially, that his efforts were knowingly based on a lie. Evidence that could substantially bolster any case that they might decide to bring against him, which, of course, they will. Kushner testified before a grand jury at a federal courthouse in Washington last month, where it's said to have maintained that it was his impression that Trump truly believed the election was stolen, according to a person briefed with the matter. The questioning of Kushner shows that the federal investigation being led by Jack Smith continues to pierce layers of those closest to Trump. Prosecutors weigh whether to bring charges against Trump in connection with what they say are baseless assertions of problems with the election. I'm sure. A spokesman for Mr. Kushner and Mr. Trump did not respond to comment. But others, like White House communications directors, were there. Others are testifying. And so things are getting very, very close. Somebody else who appeared on this was Newt Gingrich. And Gingrich apparently testified before the January 6th grand jury as well. CNN got this leak from the special counsel. Testified on Thursday, according to a person familiar with the matter. They say Gingrich allegedly communicated with senior advisors to former Trump about television advertisements that relied on false claims of fraud, according to documents obtained by the House Select Committee. The panel also claimed that Gingrich played an important role in an effort to submit fake slates of electors. Gingrich lawyers didn't respond to comment. As the special counsel's investigation into Trump's retention of classified documents show signs of wrapping up, prosecutors are getting close. So any day now, I think we'll see it because they're going to run into a timing problem again. They know that in D.C., they'll bring the case much more quickly. The judge will allow this trial maybe to happen before or during the election. This is MSNBC.
Read it off my phone. We are learning from New York Times reporters that Jared Kushner was already questioned by Special Counsel Jack Smith. Tim Hafey, you had a chance to talk to Jared Kushner. I remember his testimony as a tad smug. But take us through what he provided to you and what opportunities, if any, Jack Smith might have had to push further, and what they would have wanted in terms of a criminal context from Jared Kushner.
Yeah, so we did spend about 8 hours with Mr. Kushner. He did submit to a voluntary interview by the Select Committee. They're really two separate things that about which he has information, Nicole. He's part of the president's family, was involved in discussions soon after the election in which the president was told directly that he lost. He was present for this meeting where the pollster of the data guy from the campaign actually presented the numbers and went through the sort of explanation of the decreased margins in the suburban areas. And he was already starting to move to Florida. He and his wife were looking at property and schools for their kids in November. So we developed a lot of information from him about direct communications with the president about the fact of the election loss. But the other thing that's really crucial about Kushner is that he was directly involved in the campaign fundraising that then became the Stop the Steal fundraising. He was directly, personally briefed almost daily about the cash machine, the veritable hand over fist money-making machine that was Stop the Steal.
So we wonder then if he might be in the orbit, if he might be in Jack Smith's crosshairs, because we know that people like Fannie, the biggest Fannie Willis out in Georgia, definitely the biggest Fannie that I know from Georgia, she is talking about RICO cases and people in Trump's team being prosecuted as well, something like 40 people. And we remember that really bizarre grand jury foreperson, that woman, I believe she identifies accordingly, that was strange and was talking like she was excited to have Trump, be sworn in and all the things. And it was a weird ordeal, but Jack Smith might be doing the same thing. We know Rudy Giuliani came in to testify and Sidney Powell's in the crosshairs. And so what did Jared Kushner say? Could he be charged? He's testifying on behalf of himself, but I think he's got some solidarity with the Trump team. If they all, stay in alignment together and just adhere to the truth, they're much stronger that way. But what Jack Smith is trying to do is peel these people off and get inconsistent statements from them so that they can either be charged or that they can be leveraged against other people in the purview.
As we've discussed, the Trump campaign pivoted to a fundraising operation focused on the fact that the false narrative of election fraud, Jared Kushner was right in the center of strategy of mining that false narrative for repeated cash contributions of up to $250 million after the election. So to the extent Jack Smith is looking into campaign fundraising based on these false statements of election fraud, Jared Kushner would have information about that as well.
So we'll see if he gets charged or what kind of leverage they've got on him. Here's more reaction from CNN.
Knowing that Kushner's in the inner circle, does learning that he's testified give you any new clues as to where prosecutors are in this investigation?
It does, Jake. It tells me, first of all, Jack Smith is talking to absolutely everybody, no matter what level of power or no matter proximity to Donald Trump, as he should do, as a good prosecutor would do. So this is one more item you can check off the list of, as Paula said, obvious witnesses that you want to speak with. And I think the questions that reportedly are being asked of Jared Kushner are so important because they go directly to establishing Donald Trump's criminal intent. If he is saying, I recognize that I lost this election, and it's not clear that Jared Kushner is supporting that,
right,
but there were bits of testimony in the January 6th commission to that effect. That's crucial on intent because that shows that what he was doing after that was knowingly wrong, and that's something that criminal prosecutors are going to have to establish.
Yeah, they will, and it's going to be a difficult thing to prove. I think that we have not seen evidence of that yet, and I think Trump still adheres to this statement, and I think every day that goes by, in fact, there's more evidence that the election is not what it seems. So the facts might be maturing on Donald Trump's side. The problem is that they're likely going to bring this case in D.C., and whatever the prosecutors ask for in D.C., they're very likely to get, because we've covered other cases in D.C. and we've seen how they've treated the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all of the other individuals who are the subjects of the political prosecutions taking place in this country, all emanating right out of D.C. So they're going to bring Trump in their own backyard, in their own arena, and it's going to be a case for the ages that we, of course, will continue to follow. And so, my friends, thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. We look forward to seeing you as we cover this one and more. All right. We have now Gal Luft. the Biden whistleblower. And this one involves James Comer and Hunter Biden. Yeah, this is an interesting one. James Comer sends a letter over to the FBI director demanding more information. We know Christopher Wray testified in front of Congress, didn't answer a lot of questions, and so Congress has some follow-ups. One of them involves Dr. Gal Luft, the man who's been indicted by the Biden Department of Justice after releasing a video where he blew the whistle on the Biden Department of Justice, now being prosecuted. And Director Wray, in charge of the FBI, apparently was investigating some criminality with this guy and others, but one party that was not a part of the inquiry was Hunter Biden. Strange, because Gal Luft was blowing the whistle on Hunter Biden in the same transactions for which he is being charged. So we're going to take a look at the letter that Comer sent over to the director, along with Comer's reaction to it, saying that this plea deal needs to be canceled and that there's going to be a hearing coming soon with testimony from other whistleblowers that are going to blow the lid off the whole thing. But here is what is happening in a letter that was sent over to the FBI. James Comer, chairman on the Oversight Committee from Kentucky and the United States House of Representatives, says Christopher Wray, Honorable Director Wray. The Committee on Oversight is investigating President Biden's involvement in his family business practices. Why? We want some legislative solutions that we're going to pass related to financial disclosures and things like national security. They say the committee is considering legislation aimed at deficiencies in the current legal framework regarding the disclosure of financial interests of vice presidents and sons of presidents. And so accordingly, a director recently, Gal Luft, who alleges to have worked with certain Biden family associates like Hunty, has publicized an account that raised significant concerns. And we watched the video together here. If you missed that, check it out. Last year, the DOJ charged Luft with various federal crimes after he blew the whistle. To be clear, the committee takes no position regarding the federal charges against Luft. We take the position of the presumption of innocence for everybody, Hunter included. But he's not being prosecuted. Others are. Instead, the committees request narrowly tailored information he allegedly provided the DOJ. You're not doing the investigation. We're doing the investigation. And the FBI back in March 2019 regarding his interactions with CEFC. If you've got enough evidence to charge Gal Luft, well, you should have mounds of evidence to charge Hunter. Because if there's enough for Gal, there's 10 times, or if not 100 times more for Hunter. And the amount in monetary damages between the two is not even close. It is alarming and dishonest that the committee Democrats like Raskin and others and certain media outlets have willfully ignored that the federal charges against Luft are directly related to CEFC. Neither the Democrats nor the New York Times include any reference to CEFC in their recent criticisms of the committee's interest in speaking with Luft. In fact, the New York Times references Chinese companies, but they omit CEFC's role in the scheme because they're a corrupt propaganda company. And they acknowledge that Luft was charged with acting as an unregistered agent for China. Now here, Director Wray is being bolded and italicized by James Comer, just so we're clear on what's happening here. Director Wray's getting the bold and the italic from Comer. He says, "Hey, Chris, this is the same Chinese company that paid the Biden family and their business associates significant amounts of money as disclosed in detail in bank records memoranda released by the committee. Footnote 4 if you want to learn more about them. See this document, released May 2023. In case you didn't know, the thing you're charging Luft with, it's the same company the Bidens were playing with. Additionally, the Bidens formed a partnership with CEFC, and an email indicates that Joe Biden and Hunter intended to share office space with CEFC in the United States. In the United States, with the vice president. Talk about foreign influence. Any criticism of Luft reflects the type of people who partnered with CEFC and accepted money from the corrupt Chinese company. This includes the Biden family. It would be negligent for the committee not to attempt to speak with a cooperator directly involved with the CEFC. On July 5th, the New York Post released a 14-minute video featuring Luft, which is a great video, who claims to have direct knowledge of the Biden family's international business practices, including with certain Chinese nationals with connections to the CCP. In the recording, Luft alluded to having details regarding Biden family associates' ties to the Chinese company CEFC. The founder and the chairman of the CEFC, Ye Jingming, used the company to bribe and to corruptly influence foreign officials. But after issuing his public statement, the DOJ sprung into action and unsealed its indictment of Luft. The Luft indictment revolves around payments made by CEFC to Luft. Indeed, the DOJ referenced the CEFC repeatedly in the Luft indictment and alleged significant payments from CEFC to a think tank associated with Luft. The indictment also references, quote, chairman of the CEFC China, which is, as we know, Ye Jingming, and appears to reference Patrick Ho as CC number 1. The committee agrees with the DOJ and that the CEFC, Chairman Ye, Patrick Ho, and others illegally paid for political access and influence, and this included payments to the Biden family. They're one central component of this whole puzzle, and the FBI and the DOJ look the other way. The committee is investigating now President Biden's involvement and the knowledge of his family's foreign business practices, Wray. The committee has released memoranda to the public outlining millions of dollars from foreign companies, including CEFC, and that much of the income came while Joe Biden was the VP. And while whistleblowers have come forward alleging that the FBI and the DOJ have taken actions to slow this investigation of Hunty, potentially because of improper political considerations, Luft's allegations are troublingly consistent with this separate evidence. The committee further notes that Luft approached the FBI with his allegations in 2019, well before Hunter abandoned his laptop, well before that became public. The allegations raised by Luft are directly relevant by the committee's investigation. As mentioned, we're seeking to craft legislative solutions, and so this is the ask. And this is a good ask. This is what we've been waiting for. In order to assist the committee with its investigation, please provide the committee with an unredacted copy of the FBI report, the FD 302, that was created following the meeting between Gal Luft, the DOJ, and the FBI officials in Brussels in March 2019, before the laptop was discovered. Please produce this single document by July 19, 2023. And so this is Comer, again, doing what we've already seen him do. Remember, he went after the FD 1023, which was the other form from the other whistleblowers, and he had to fight with the FBI to get it. But they eventually produced some stuff when he literally drafted a subpoena to Director Wray. So this is another, I know it's slow, I know it's tedious, I know we're tired of hearing investigation and demands. I'm tired of saying it. But this is the slow process. Remember, Gal Luft met with these people. And actually, the guy that Gal Luft says he met with one of these DOJ officials, one of the same DOJ officials who got the search warrant for the laptop. In other words, this guy's just cleaning up the Biden trash everywhere he goes. And so if we get this form, we're going to know more about who these people were, what they said. And it's Pandora's box being opened. It's a little sliver. It just cracks the shell, gets a little bit wider, a little bit wider, a little bit wider. And James Comer has been staying on it. And so we're looking forward to seeing what he's able to uncover. The Oversight Committee posted this, which was an interesting graphic showing the process by which this occurs. This example came from Romania. May 21st, VP Biden goes to Romania. That's May 21st, 2014. VP Biden goes to Romania. September 28th, 2015, Romanian president comes back to the White House. Then he's charged later with corrupt wires to the Bidens through an American associate. 2015 to 2017, that money, 10 grand went to Hallie, 80 grand went to an unknown Biden. We don't know where that money went. And almost $1 million went over to Hunter from a Wasco PC. Man, he was clearing a lot of cash. Total, $1 million. So that same cycle times many different shell companies with many different countries over and over and over again, just printing cash for Hunter and the Biden crime family. Now, this is James Comer talking about wanting to cancel the plea deal when this time comes, and talking about the cocaine and double standards that we've seen out of the Biden administration, not just from the DOJ or the FBI, but now the Secret Service. They can't even find the crackhead in the White House.
Very dangerous. It's very disturbing. One of two things has happened here. Either number one, the Secret Service is lying to us and they're covering for someone, or number two, they're incompetent, because this is supposed to be the most secure dwelling in America. And for the Secret Service to admit to the world that not only can they not figure out who dropped off a white powdery substance in one of 3 locations in the White House, that remember cubby. That story's changed 3 times where the cocaine was actually
cubby
found.
With a lock and
but
key.
Also that there have been 2 other instances where illegal drugs were found on the premise in the White House. This is unacceptable. We spend a lot of money, a lot of tax dollars to make sure that we have the best Secret Service that money can buy, but yet they can't determine who brings illegal substances into the White House. I think that's very disturbing.
But, Congressman, I'm equally as disturbed that they gave up.
Well, they gave up because they don't want to uncover who it is. They know who it is.
Question, they spent 11 days to try to figure out who left an illegal substance in the White House, but they've been spending over 5 years investigating the Bidens for all their money laundering,
so all
their
racketeering,
all their tax evasion, and according to U.S. Attorney Weiss, they're still investigating the president and his son for bribery and for potential wrongdoing. So it makes no sense. The Secret Service hadn't really received a black eye like the Department of Justice or the FBI, but unfortunately today, this is another name on the list of agencies that have run amok. Again, either they're not being truthful with the House Oversight Committee, or they're incompetent by not being able to determine who left this substance. It's hard for me to believe that our technology at the FBI couldn't identify some DNA on this bag of cocaine.
It's just cameras, man. All they needed was the cameras. They had the cameras. They still couldn't figure it out.
A lot of new information.
We've been sitting on some new bank records. Obviously, it's very encouraging to read the transcript that the Ways and Committees had with the transcribed interview with the 2 IRS whistleblowers, because they actually knew a lot about many of these shell companies, and I think they were on the right track until they were told to stand down. So the American people are going to get to watch live both whistleblowers, including whistleblower X, who's never revealed his identity. Woo! He will do that the day of our hearing, and everyone can see. Hopefully Fox will be covering that, Sean. And we have specific substantive questions about many of these wires, about many of these shell companies, about potential money laundering, about potential racketeering. And I believe that these 2 witnesses are going to be able to answer those questions. So many times, Sean, you have these congressional hearings and, they're all hat, no cattle. You don't really learn anything new, and they're not substantive. This should be a very substantive, informative hearing for the American people. And this is going to be the first time the American people actually hear credible witnesses say under oath exactly what crimes have been committed by the Biden family.
Do you have standing to go before the judge? They have this plea deal, no jail time for Hunter. Do you have standing to go to this judge and request that this deal not be agreed to by the judge because of new information and new evidence has been forthcoming?
we have to go through the Department of Justice, unfortunately, for things like granting immunity.
No.
Yeah, right, no. Long story short.
All right, let me ask you this. When we got these WhatsApp messages, I'm sitting.
All right, so question about Hunter and the double standards. Let's see what Comer says.
Yes. And remember, that energy company is the same energy company that was paying Gal Luft, and the Department of Justice indicted Gal Luft on being an unregistered foreign agent, yet Hunter Biden received about 25 times more money from that same Chinese energy company, and they let him walk free. So we're, in addition to having the committee hearing with the IRS whistleblowers, where we're going to be able to ask very substantive tax questions, we're also going to be having depositions and transcribed interviews where we can ask people exactly what Joe Biden knew and when he knew it. So I think next week has the potential to be a very productive week with respect to our investigation. And I think it's going to be, there will be a lot of questions that Joe Biden's going to have to answer. And I don't know how much longer the mainstream media can turn a blind eye to this, because the evidence is overwhelming that many crimes were committed. And obviously, Joe Biden had to be front and center in this.
Chairman.
All right, we'll see if the media responds. I doubt it. But Comer is staying on it. He's going to be requesting the actual form from the meeting with Gal Luft. And we'll be looking forward to seeing what that looks like, because the FBI is going to dig their heels in just like they did last time. The process was slow. James Comer sent a letter, nice little request, sent a follow-up demand, then sent a subpoena threat, and then I think a subpoena came. And then Christopher Wray finally showed up. And there was some action on it, but Congress is staying on it, and we see senators are now banging the table about it. Hopefully they deliver. All right. And so we've got some more. And this is one example of somebody who is fired up. As new corruption is revealed from the Biden Department of Justice, Merrick Garland keeps emerging as a person responsible for it. Some saying that he lied to us in Congress when he was testifying about David Weiss, the prosecutor prosecuting Hunter Biden. Ted Cruz, as more has been revealed, is very irritated about it, now proposing a solution to this, saying that maybe it's time to appoint a special counsel to investigate Merrick Garland. Somebody's lying. It's either David Weiss, and he's got emails that support. It's either Gary Shapley, who's got emails to support his claims about David Weiss, or it's Merrick Garland, who said that David Weiss had powers that many people claim he didn't. So Ted Cruz says, now let's appoint a special prosecutor. They've already appointed a special prosecutor for Donald Trump. They've already appointed a special prosecutor for Joe Biden. Why don't we do one for Merrick Garland as well?
Joins equal everything. Department of Justice. This FBI is the most politicized Department of Justice and FBI we have ever seen. You mentioned the House. The House is doing a terrific job. I had lunch today with James Comer. He and Jim Jordan together are doing a fantastic job of trying to hold the Biden administration to account. The House is the only body of Congress doing its job because Senate Democrats don't want to know the truth. They're not interested. But here's where we are on the facts. We now have two credible whistleblowers, both IRS career employees, who've come forward at enormous risk to their own careers, to their own livelihoods. And they've reported on corruption within the Department of Justice, specifically that Merrick Garland and his political appointees repeatedly interfered in the investigation of Hunter Biden, and especially that what they did is they protected the White House. They protected the big guy. They said no questions about the big guy. You're not allowed to investigate the big guy. Not only that, they alleged that the Department of Justice tipped off Hunter Biden's lawyers before they executed a search warrant, before they tried to question Hunter Biden. Repeatedly, they allege the senior officials at the Department of Justice obstructed this investigation. Now, we don't know if these whistleblowers are telling the truth. But if they are, if they're telling the truth, their testimony is flatly contradictory with what Merrick Garland has said under oath. I questioned Merrick Garland in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he told the Judiciary Committee under oath that the U.S. attorney investigating Hunter Biden had complete authority to investigate and that there was zero political interference. His statement is directly contrary to what the whistleblower said. The House needs to have a hearing. They need to have both whistleblowers under oath. They need to have David Weiss, the U.S. attorney, under oath, and they need to have Merrick Garland, the attorney general, under oath. Somebody's lying, and if Garland's lying, he committed lying under oath to Congress, which is a felony, and he committed obstruction of justice, which is a felony. He obviously can't investigate himself. So Merrick Garland should be recused from the entire matter, and the Department of Justice should appoint a special counsel to determine whether or not the Attorney General of the United States
I don't think
has
there's
committed
anyone
multiple
there
felonies.
with the honor and integrity to do it, and I'd like to get to the bottom of the 1023 form, but we're talking also about lawyers that have now passed.
And the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia to bring charges against Hunter Biden for the most serious tax offenses. The cases had to be brought in D.C. and California because that's where the crimes occurred. And what the IRS whistleblowers alleged is those U.S. attorneys refused to bring the case. And to be clear, one of those U.S. attorneys was a political donor to Joe Biden. Another of those U.S. attorneys was a political donor to Kamala Harris. And their allegations, again, are directly contrary to what Merrick Garland has said under oath. And this is something I've talked about at great length on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. You look at these whistleblowers, both of them are career IRS employees. One, Gary Shapley, was a senior supervisory agent with a lot of experience. He has no reason that's evident on the record to lie. He doesn't appear to be a Republican. The other whistleblower, he's self-described as a gay Democrat with a man for a husband. There's no reason to think he's got an axe to grind with Joe Biden, and yet he's got the courage to call this out. We need a special counsel because the attorney general is not above the law, and neither is Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to have a gay Democrat who is testifying against the Biden crime family, and well-deserved. I mean, my goodness. So that is Ted Cruz, and they're saying that there needs to be a special counsel appointed to go after Merrick Garland in particular, because Merrick Garland can't investigate himself. He's already the head of the entire DOJ. So we were asking ourselves about this, and there are examples of where this has happened before. And so Congress certainly should be able to do this. Here are some examples that ChatGPT gave us about special counsels. We had one in Watergate. Special prosecutor named Archibald Cox investigated the DNC break-in, led to the resignation of Richard Nixon, and other cabinet members were investigated. In Iran-Contra, we had a special counsel appointed to investigate different people in Reagan's administration, looked at several cabinet members there. Valerie Plame affair, CIA operative. This happened during George Bush, including some cabinet members there. And we had another example. So anyway, the point is, this has happened before, and so it would be well within congressional authority to actually do it. The question is, will they? We'll see. But Byron Donalds is also suggesting something else if they're not going to do a removal. He wants to propose impeachment.
Independent counsel Saul Weisenberg. Congressman, let's start with you. Do you think Attorney General Garland has committed an impeachable offense?
I think he has. And let's be very clear. You can't have the investigative arm of the IRS doing its job, wanting to bring felony charges, but then somehow with the political brass at the IRS and the political brass at the Department of Justice, it all gets slow-walked. It all gets tamped down. They can't go get the necessary search warrants. They can't interview the right people. Some of the stuff that came out is they couldn't even pursue any use of the word Biden in some of their questioning. Like, this is how ridiculous this is. And so for the Attorney General to not know, and to also add to this, the Chief of Staff to the Attorney General not to know what's going on, makes no sense at all.
Well, not knowing would be ignorance, but would it be an impeachable offense? You would have to say that he's lying before Congress.
Yes, if he knew this, well, even if he didn't talk about it in front of Congress, if he used the power of his office to slow walk and to obstruct these investigations, that is an impeachable offense, 100%.
Now, Saul, you think that the first step should be having the AG and perhaps the U.S. Attorney Weiss testify before Congress. So if that's the case, what do you think is the most important question for each to have to answer?
they can do this if they can just not grandstand and screw it up, Laura. They need to bring 3 people in. They need to bring David Weiss in, the U.S. Attorney from Delaware. They need to bring the Attorney General in. And they need to bring in the person who's probably in the thick of this, and we haven't heard anything from her. That's Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. The Deputy Attorney General runs the Department of Justice on a day-to-day basis. I can guarantee you that if David Weiss didn't pick up the phone to talk to Merrick Garland, it would have been in all likelihood Lisa Monaco. And the first thing I would ask, there's so many questions to ask, the first thing I would ask Weiss is, were you commissioned as a special attorney? This special attorney they keep talking about that has the right to bring a case in any district without getting permission, you actually have to be designated and commissioned. Now, A.G. Garland says he had the authority from the beginning to do anything he wanted to. He had more authority than a special counsel because he was a special attorney. Well, when were you commissioned? Do you even now have a commission? It looks like from his last letter that he did not have a commission. Were you telling, here's a very simple thing that he hasn't spoken to. Did you tell the agents that you had gone to the D.C. U.S. Attorney, Matthew Graves, and that he had declined to let you bring charges, or to use Weiss's terminology, declined to partner with you? Did the same thing happen in California? They can't say we can't talk about it because they've already gone out and explained what authority they had and didn't have.
And
These
what
are
simple
really concrete questions.
And what simple question quickly to Garland?
Simple question to Garland is it's the same question. Did you sign a commission? You say he had the authority. Did you think
did he actually sign it?
You could do it orally? Yeah. So it's
all right, Congressman. The letter that
simple.
Weiss sent to Senator Graham, noting this ongoing investigation we keep talking about. Here's how MSNBC spun this.
All right, so let's see what Byron says.
Even the whistleblower who was the head of the supervisory unit doing the investigation said, yeah, we wanted to bring felony charges, but we were stopped because David Weiss couldn't bring those charges and we weren't allowed to do it.
What is this ongoing investigation? This is what we don't know who's conducting it. We don't know if it's of the president.
They say it's hunters. They just say it's an ongoing investigation so that they don't have to actually charge or do anything about it. But obviously that can only last for so long, especially when you've got whistleblowers who are willing to risk their neck to come out in front of America and tell the truth about it. We'll be looking forward to it. I think that you're starting to see some real anger here from both sides of the House, both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, now speaking out. Byron Donalds, Ted Cruz saying we're at the level of impeachment. It's time to appoint a special prosecutor, and the whistleblower testimony will likely bring more to light, and maybe more pressure will come down to bear. All right, my friends, and in our final segment on the day, we saved this one. Hunter Biden has a lot of bravado, man. He now sends Donald Trump a cease and desist letter. Donald Trump has been calling him things like a crackhead because, of course, he was a crackhead. Many people think he might still be a crackhead given the fact that there is cocaine found in the White House. But his lawyers sent a cease and desist to Trump. And this means they're going on offense. And why wouldn't they? His daddy runs the Department of Justice. And he can basically do whatever he wants without any recourse or consequences at this moment. So he's sending letters out to everybody. And Donald Trump got one of them. This is what the news said. ABC broke the story. They said Hunter's lawyers send a cease and desist letter to Trump over his social media posts. An attorney for Hunty Poo sent a letter saying that this behavior from Trump could lead to injury for Hunty. The lawyer is called Abe Lowell. He's one of the younger Biden lawyers, cited past examples where Trump's language apparently inspired violence like January 6th, and Paul Pelosi with David DePape, and Obama, saying this is not a false alarm. Trump, you must cease and desist. He's not a crackhead. The Secret Service didn't even find that it was his. So they sent that over to Trump. Here is what the actual letter looks like. And it's pretty amazing that they have the cojones to do it. But when daddy runs things and you're in charge of the FBI, why not? Here's the letter, sent July 13th from Abe David Lowell, partner at Winston, Strawn. This goes over to Trump's lawyers, all of them. Look, Todd Blanche, Christopher Kise, Joe Tacopina, and Susan Nicholas. All of Trump's lawyers get the letter. Here it is. It says, Dear Todd, Chris, Joe, and Susan, addressing them by their first names, which is, not uncommon if you're lawyers. You can call each other by your first names. As you know, Trump team, Winston and Strawn represents, and I am writing on behalf of our client, Hunty Poo. I'm sending this letter to make a demand that your client, former President Donald Trump, hereby cease and desist from making public statements about my client, which are both defamatory and likely to incite Mr. Trump's followers to take actions against Mr. Biden, and which could lead to his or his family's injury. The lawyer for Hunty says, I'm a little surprised to have to send this, because it would seem that Mr. Trump is currently facing enough legal problems that he would not want to create any more liability for saying and doing things that could result in harm and injury. And it appears you have enough to do in defending your client in various arenas now, and yet to come than to have to deal with one more legal issue and case. Man, so he's really rubbing it in. He's like, hey, my team has all the levers of power right now. My client's dad runs the Department of Justice. He's currently indicting your client, and he's going to indict him again. And you're going to have to deal with it. This is Hunter's lawyer, who Hunter's dad runs the Department of Justice. He's the president of the country. He runs the whole country. He's the executive. It's pretty incredible that this lawyer is basically rubbing Trump's nose in his client's prosecutions of his political enemies indirectly. It's just crazy that it's happening in America, but here we are. And he's like, yeah, it's no fault of our own that your client's in these problems. Just happens to be Trump's political opponent. And he says, I'm a little surprised. He's like, I'm disappointed in you. Now, it's like when your mom, I'm not mad, but I am disappointed. It's like, oh, that hurts. Now, the most urgent issue is Mr. Trump's thinly veiled calls to action to his easy-to-trigger followers. Most recently, on July 11th, Mr. Trump wrote on Truth Social, he said, Weiss is a coward, a smaller version of Bill Barr, who never had the courage to do what everyone knows should have been done. He gave out a traffic ticket instead of a death sentence. Emphasis added. Now, you may respond that it was a mere figure of speech. All right, that's, I think, what most people would do, is just say that. He says, but we're not going to do that. However, we have seen what might pass as such a phrase when uttered by rational people is heard by too many people in this country as some terrible injustice for which they must take physical and violent action. How do we know? Incidents like the attack on the Capitol were resulting from Mr. Trump's incitement. That has created tragic and even fatal consequences. Hunty's lawyer says, this is not a false alarm, Mr. Trump. Late last year, former Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was attacked in his home by an intruder. Okay. That was David DePape, and he lived outside of like a BLM rainbow house with flags all over the place. Mr. Biden was also on that attacker's list. Just in the past 2 weeks, there was another incident, this one in D.C. In this one, Taylor Taranto was arrested with weapons in his van in a neighborhood where Obama lived. On the day of his arrest, Taranto reposted a Truth Social from your client containing what Mr. Trump himself claimed was Obama's home address. In a post on Telegram, Taranto wrote, "We got these losers surrounded. See you in hell. Podestas and Obamas." And so he got arrested, right? And others, too, have faced serious threats from supporters of the former president, such as Judge Bruce Reinhart, who faced a storm of death threats following the warrant for Trump's arrest. And his home address was even posted on right-wing internet sites, along with anti-Semitic slurs. And again, I don't endorse any of this stuff. I don't condone any violence. I don't condone any threats. I don't condone anything that would constitute harassment or anything like that. And if you are, crossing that threshold, these people will prosecute you aggressively. Okay, so be extra cautious out there. You don't even have to break the law and they'll charge you. So my point here is this type of behavior is bad, but it is not Trump's fault, and it doesn't give Hunter Biden license to tell Trump to stop posting on Truth Social in any way, shape, or form. So Trump's team gets this message. Hunter's lawyers say, we are just one social media message away from another incident, and you should make clear to Trump, if you have not done so already, that Mr. Trump's words have caused harm in the past and threaten to do so again if he does not stop. This is part of the big narrative. Trump is dangerous. Trump needs to be stopped. If he is not held in custody, he's going to lose the election again, and he's going to insurrect again. Trump, through his speech, caused January 6th. He's going to cause it again. It's not just, and for some reason, Trump also caused David DePape to do that thing. This is a total non-related incident, but okay. He says it is not just his actual calls for action that inflame his followers. Trump has invoked my client's name on social media accounts to harass and incite his followers on a near daily basis since Mr. Trump himself was indicted. He's mentioned my client more than 20 times in posts about July alone. Trump has doubled down on his dangerous rhetoric about Biden in the days since he reached a resolution with the DOJ. Trump said this. On March 31st, when Mr. Trump was notified that charges had been filed, your client's response on Truth Social was, "Where's Hunter?" The following week, during an evening address at Mar-a-Lago, after 34 charges against Trump were unsealed and he surrendered and was arraigned, your client's response was to make wild allegations against Biden and his family. Trump posted this. He said, when Hunter harshly threatened the Chinese businessman, he and his father, Joe, were together in Joe's house. Even the ownership of the house and rent paid are questionable and now forgotten by the news. Where classified documents having to do with China were being stored. They took millions of dollars from China. How much information was given? Big stuff. Joe is totally corrupt. Trump also posted, he said, Biden will do whatever President Xi wants of him. Remember, Hunter and Joe illegally took large amounts of money from both countries, but China right now is the bigger threat. He also reposted another thing saying horrible. And just another week, this other week, he posted something else. Said the cocaine was probably for use by Hunter, was probably Crooked Joe in order to give his presidency a little life and energy. So he's posting all of these things that are offending Hunty. So Hunter's lawyers say, if Mr. Trump does not, that Mr. Biden has neither committed nor been accused of the charges that your client is claiming. Mishandling or even having access to classified info. Right, because he runs the DOJ. He's not going to indict himself. And that the Biden family was not at the White House, let alone in the vestibule in the period when the cocaine was found. That's also not true. They were there on Friday when it was found. The White House lied about that. The press pool said that they caught them leaving on Friday night. So maybe not when the cocaine was found, but when it was placed, they were there. They were not there when they were found. You see how sneaky lawyers are? You got to be careful. Yeah, they weren't there when it was found. They left. But they were there when it was placed. Mr. Trump constantly and misleadingly agitates his followers about the so-called injustice between what he is facing and what he perceives to be undue leniency to our client, saying that other people will just take the law into their hands. And so let's be clear, says Hunter's lawyer, it was Mr. Trump, not Mr. Biden, who allegedly illegally shared classified documents with others, and it's Mr. Trump who's accused of paying hush money about his personal actions. Well, that's because Joe hasn't been charged with anything. He should. If there was an equal standard of justice, he would have been already. So Hunter's lawyers wrap it up. They say, look, I'm writing to demand a stop to this. Tell your client to knock it off. Indeed, during the initial proceedings in New York, Judge Mercan made a similar request for you to speak to Trump and anybody else you need to remind them to please refrain from making statements that are likely to incite violence or civil unrest. Stop talking about our client. You don't need to respond, as I'm hoping you'll speak with Mr. Trump privately and explain to him how his incitement can further hurt people and cause himself even more legal trouble. All right, so the lawyer will show this to Trump and tell Trump, hey, they sent you a letter. What do you want me to do with it? And Trump will say, I don't know, throw it in the shredder with the rest of the other useless letters from these people. It's totally meaningless. Hunter Biden's a public figure. He's the president's son. Trump can have his opinions on him, and it's not incitement of any violence to critique a crackhead for being a crackhead and for allegedly bringing drugs into the White House. So we have questions about double standards. Other people have questions about double standards. It's not just Trump. Here is Kevin McCarthy wondering why the DOJ and the FBI and now the Secret Service and all of these people are covering for the Bidens. Why are they protecting them while crapping all over the rest of America?
Why does the IRS go after Americans, but when it comes to the Biden family, they let the statute of limitations run out for the most grievous, that an IRS whistleblower has to come through to Congress? But why does the IRS remove these workers from going after these cases when it comes to the Biden family? Why are the Biden family treated different than every other American family?
Because they do the bidding of their handlers. They are just little pawns. They move stuff around. Everybody's getting rich. We have another endless war. And so they are provided cover. Chip Roy also commented on this, saying these double standards exist and there needs to be something done about it.
Is that the only thing that potentially could be going on is a fair question. I mean, look, after everything that the president's son has been through, no clear connection, no clear anything, but would there be a more vigorous look at where it came from? Your last quick thought.
Well, all I know is when I look at what they're trying to, the deal they're trying to cut with Hunter Biden, it's a deal they never would have cut with any average American. As someone that I know, as I prosecuted gun crimes in Texas, there's no way they would have let an average American get away with what they're letting Hunter Biden get away with. Now we're seeing what's happening in the White House. We've got some work to do, and we should use the power of the purse to do it.
Power of the purse, take their money away. No new money from Congress. And so the letter from Hunter goes over to Donald Trump. They're saying maybe Donald Trump will stop talking badly about Hunter. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. Here was a fun clip when Trump called in to the show asking where that cocaine came from.
What is your reaction when you see cocaine in the White House? Can you even believe that's possible?
Well, you saw I put out a truth. I know most of your people are on truth because I think truth is better than anything out there. But I put out a truth. It's in my opinion, it's Hunter and probably Joe. Because, you know, you watch Joe at the beginning of a speech, and he's got a little life. Not much, but he's got a little life. By the end of the speech, he's a disaster. He can't even find his way off the thing. So there's something going on there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was for both of them. I think it's for both of them, but that's my opinion.
I said, great minds think alike. I said that on my TV.
No, I think they pump them up.
All right,
absolutely. And we can't have a president that's on cocaine when you're dealing with nuclear weapons and everything else. You know, we're dealing, and you've heard me say this.
No, we don't want coked out presidents.
These guys, these are at the top of their game. These are smart, whether you like them or their country or their policies, you know, which are pretty tough policies. But these people are at the top of their game mentally. And we have a guy who, in his best years, wasn't at the top of the game. And it's very dangerous. This country has never been in danger like this, Wayne, because of, you know, the nuclear weapons and weaponry generally. It's never. And we have a man that has no clue what's happening.
We can't have a crackhead president, man. It's not good for the country. He's got important things to do. He can't be coked out all out of his mind. All right. We need focus and competency. So crackhead Joe has not been able to deliver that. But Hunter doesn't like when you highlight their misdeeds, doesn't want it to be called out, said it's just a stupid letter over to Donald Trump. And hopefully Donald Trump continues to hammer him and the Biden crime family. As the election continues, of course, we'll continue to cover. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on this lovely, beautiful Friday. We covered some good ground here today. We have Hunter's cease and desist letter. Ted Cruz and Byron Donalds have some solutions, a special prosecutor or impeachment. We've got James Comer demanding new FD forms from the FBI. including unredacted materials from a meeting with Gal Luft at Brussels in 2019. We also saw that Jared Kushner appeared at the Trump grand jury for January 6 investigations brought by Jack Smith. And of course, we had Jack Smith objecting to the indefinite trial date, which will very likely get a ruling on that maybe tomorrow or maybe today, maybe Monday. We'll see. And then lastly, we had the Biden mobilization of reserve troops out in the Ukrainian theater. And so we covered a lot, my friends. But now it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about it. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Friday, this early show. And hey, I see we got some clips coming in here. Thank you. K-Bean is clipping for us. Thank you, K-Bean. We got some others. In the house, we got Voice of the People. Thank you, Voice. Been a member for 4 months, baby. Things are getting serious, I'd say. You've been around a while. I appreciate that one. And says, with the reserves being deployed to Europe, I believe that we will be going to war very soon. Man, I sure as heck hope not. That does not sound good, but a lot of people are concerned about it. You're not alone. Mike Lee, Vivek, I think others are going, what? Another guy I follow is called Clay Martin. He's a good author. He's a little bit nervous about it too. So I don't think you're alone. This one came in from Common Free. I saw this before the show started over on Locals. This was great. Says, hey, Rob and Watcher friends, touring Monticello today on the way to D.C. Says Jefferson was an attorney, a renowned architect, and then he went on to write one of the greatest documents in human history. With views like these, I can see where he got his inspiration. Have a great show. And look at this. Look how gorgeous. Monticello. Oh, where'd that go? What did I do here? Where did that go? What the heck did I just do with the screen? I think I just exited the whole dang screen. I don't know where it went. All right, give me a minute. It is a beautiful sight. There it is. Monticello. Gorgeous. Yeah, you can see why you'd be inspired for liberty in a place like that. We had another one from FMF Doc in the house. Says, what's up, watchers? Good to see you, FMF. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the tip. This one came in from Rocky Water. Says, Rob, I've missed a bunch due to work, but great to catch you live again. Love how the show's evolving. Feels it's just getting tighter, better as time goes on. Keep on shining that spotlight, brother. Appreciated. Thank you, Rocky Water. Hey, I'm glad you made it. I know things get busy, and we just appreciate you being here when we can have you. But thank you for that feedback. You know, I'm trying to do better. You know, I'm trying to improve. If this show and yours truly, if it's the same 6 months from now that it was today, I have failed something. You know, it should be improving. We should be tightening things up. We should be changing things, experimenting, growing. And so thank you for that, Rocky. I appreciate that feedback. Good to have you here. We had another one from Waldo the Lost. Thank you. Waldo the Lost. Been a member, no question, but has a nice grizzly bear looking there as well. Thank you, Waldo. Thanks for being here, my friend. Spud says, Joe needs the ultimate distraction, World War III. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah, and we're just waiting for one single radioactive isotope to come floating around, and then that's going to lock us all down again, or whatever else they say. Thanks, Spuds. We have the real JR, the real RJ Bond, the real RJ Bond in the house. Thank you for this one, the real RJ. Says, you know, Congress in 1950s granted itself the power to force a witness to answer questions, even after they've said they won't. If the full House or Senate or 2/3 of a congressional committee vote to issue a subpoena to a witness who refuses to testify, a federal court will order that person to appear and answer their questions. And the answers cannot be used against them in any criminal proceeding, so why not now? Well, I don't think the Republicans have 2/3 in either one, so they definitely don't have 2/3, so that's one reason. But certainly, I mean, they could take a more aggressive action. There's no question about that. You know, like if there's going to be impeachment, I think that stuff is coming up pretty soon. Maybe next year would be the more appropriate time to sort of go all out on it, but I'm sure it's heating up. I mean, think about what they're gearing to drop in October of 2024. Should be a doozy. This one came in from Cindy Banks. Says, I've heard 2 different news crews say that there are no cameras inside the West Wing. I don't believe that. Can you answer whether that is true or not? I don't know. No, I would just be speculating. My thoughts would be, well, what news agencies are saying that? And then I still probably wouldn't believe it. I mean, it seems kind of negligent that they wouldn't have oversight on an entrance where there's a cubby where you put your things into with a lock and key. I just don't really believe it. If they don't have cameras, why would that be? It's because they don't want to track what's happening there, which seems nefarious. Now, the one thing I had heard, Cindy, is that there was construction going on, and so that they're not using the Situation Room. Jake Sullivan told us that. He said that they're using the Situation Room in a different location, and they're doing construction on the new one, but it should be done soon. So maybe stuff like that. But look, as Comer said, it's either complicit or incompetent. Same thing that we saw with January 6th. Thanks for the tip here, Cindy. Hey, Jumpin' Jeff. Thank you, Jumpin'. Says, Rob, thank you for keeping that big, beautiful spotlight shining. And thank you, Jumpin' Jeff. Thanks for being here and joining us as we do. Couldn't do it without you. I mean, it'd be, kind of unproductive if we couldn't do this together. So I'm grateful that you are here and joining us. And so that, my friends, is it for the show. Let's say hello to our Twitter friends before we go over to our after party and hang out a little bit before we wrap it up early on the day. Do we have anybody joining us over on Twitter? It's just me. That's okay. It's just me watching. That's all right. Let's see who else is here. Hey, Cohen Levin Hanania says you might need says your doctor might need a doctor himself because of how good you look. LOL. I was on the elliptical and I almost fell off. LOL. That's good. All right, good. I'm glad you like that one. And it's a good thing you were on the elliptical too. Yeah, your doctor might need a doctor because of how good you look. Yeah, it's true. He might. You never know. You never know. I'm glad you were exercising when that one dropped. And there's a bunch of good memes over here from Silicon Valley Reject. And here, let me see if I can grab one of these. Which one of these? Oh, here's a good one. This one says Cocaine House, not the White House. All right, so there's some other memes over there. If you want to go check them out, I'd encourage you to do that. You can follow us on Twitter at Rob Govea ESQ. This is the address. That's me right there. We'd love it if you joined us and followed us over there. Twitter's working hard. We're trying to, at one point, build out our community, but we're having a difficult time uploading videos. But John McGarvey, thanks for sharing the posts over there. Watching the Watchers, you can check us out on Twitter. As the tech evolves, hopefully we can start posting more of our videos. We're just having a difficult time uploading them right now. They don't upload for whatever reason. So we'll work on that, my friends. But we are done here for the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We'd love it if you joined us. We do a lot of fun stuff like going over our member only morning streams. We go over the dockets. We go over the schedules. Fun, fun for us, I think. But it'd be great if you joined us. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, don't forget to grab your fieldofgreens.com. So even your doctor needs a doctor because you'll look so good. Save 15% off with code Robert when you check out. Load up on the good stuff. Also, if you like this mind map software and you want to play around with some of it at home, you can go to spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap and check it out over there. Create a free account if you would like. Want to thank our mods and meme smiths who modded down the fort for us and kept things nice and orderly. Big shout outs. Thank you to K Bean and to John McGarvey clipping away for us today. Appreciate you both. Thank you for doing that. Really does help. We got our mods, Vientikis Prime, K Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Coles here, Zulu, Beyond Geostars, Zach Nichols, our friend John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, helping mod the fort down for us. Our friend Sleepy Dog Lee, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810 in the house. Very appreciative for everybody who helps keep things nice and orderly on the show. And so, my friends, that is going to be it for us on the weekend. We are going to do some member stuff this weekend. We'll be out in nature a little bit more. And so we'll be posting some walk and talks and connecting with Mother Earth and getting vitamin D and sunshine. So come and join us watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But it has been a beautiful week. It is now about to become the weekend. And that means it's a good time for all of us to unplug a little bit, unplug from the politics. Kind of a heavy week this week, and it's kind of some heavy stuff we're going through. And so it's always a good time to get outside, get some nature, connect with friends, connect with family, get some rest, get some relaxation. Doorbells here, probably the feds, and unplug a little bit because we have to recharge our batteries and come back here on Monday to do it all again, baby. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. And I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye. Locals, hang tight. I'll see you in a minute.